The skies were calm just days before Hurricane Maria struck Puerto Rico in 2017, but those who lived on the island knew the calm wouldn't last. Winds roared at over 150 miles per hour, tearing roofs from homes, uprooting trees, and plunging the island into chaos. Floods rose quickly, swallowing neighborhoods and cutting off entire communities. Yet the storm wasn't the true disaster. It was what followed. For weeks, months even, the island lay in darkness. Families waited for aid that trickled in too late or never came at all. The devastation wasn't just from nature, it was a mirror reflecting decades of colonial neglect. Puerto Rico's vulnerability didn't begin with Maria. It began long ago, in 1898, when the island was ceded to the United States after the Spanish-American War. Puerto Rico became a possession, not a partner. Trade laws like the Jones Act suffocated its economy. Local farmers couldn't compete, businesses couldn't grow, and imported goods became unaffordable. Over time, dependency became woven into Puerto Rico's reality. Its survival wasn't its own, it was tied to decisions made on the mainland. In the 1950s, there was hope, or so it seemed. The U.S. launched Operation Bootstrap, promising prosperity through industrialization. But what came instead was environmental destruction. Factories sprang up, replacing lush farmland. With little to no regulation, toxic waste was dumped into rivers and air, poisoning communities. These were working-class neighborhoods, places where families struggled to make ends meet. And they became dumping grounds for industries that prioritized profits over people. Even worse, Puerto Rico wasn't just seen as an economic tool, it was a military testing ground. Nowhere was this clearer than on Vieques, a small island off Puerto Rico's eastern coast. For more than 60 years, the U.S. Navy bombed and tested munitions there, leaving the land and water riddled with toxins. Children played on beaches littered with unexploded bombs, while families suffered from cancer and respiratory diseases. Vieques became a symbol of Puerto Rico's place in the U.S. system, not as a home, but as something disposable. For decades, the people of Vieques protested. They marched, they organized, they pleaded for their voices to be heard, but their cries were drowned out by explosions, until finally, after years of activism, the bombing stopped. Yet the damage remains. The land is still scarred, the people are still sick, and Vieques stands as a testament to what happens when colonial powers value land more than lives. While Puerto Rico fought against colonialism on the island, a parallel battle was waged on the mainland. Puerto Ricans who had moved to cities like New York and Chicago faced systemic racism and neglect. They lived in overcrowded neighborhoods with crumbling infrastructure, garbage piled high on the streets. Public services ignored their needs. Inspired by the civil rights movement, groups like the Young Lords emerged to fight back. They weren't just activists, they were revolutionaries. The Young Lords began as a street gang in Chicago, but they transformed into a force for justice. In 1969, in East Harlem, they organized the Garbage Offensive. They piled trash in the streets, lit it on fire, and demanded the city take action. Their message was simple: environmental neglect is racial injustice. Clean streets, clean water, clean air, these weren't luxuries, they were human rights. And the Young Lords made the world see that neglecting Puerto Rican communities wasn't an oversight, it was systemic. Their activism wasn't limited to the mainland. They shone a light on Puerto Rico, calling out the environmental destruction caused by the U.S. Navy in Vieques. They connected the dots between racism in New York, colonialism in Puerto Rico, and the broader struggle for civil rights. They understood that environmental justice was civil rights, because how can people thrive when their communities are poisoned? The civil rights movement wasn't just about segregation, it was about dignity. It was about saying, we deserve better, and Puerto Ricans, whether on the island or the mainland, deserved better too. Like Martin Luther King Jr., marching with sanitation workers in Memphis, the Young Lords demanded respect for their communities. They fought for better housing, better health care, and yes, better environments. Their work wasn't separate from the civil rights movement, it was part of it. And they made it clear, justice for Puerto Ricans was justice for all marginalized people. Today, Puerto Rico still fights. Hurricanes batter the island. Climate change threatens its future. Pollution lingers in places like Vieques. And the scars of colonialism are still visible in its economy, its infrastructure, and its people. But the lessons of the past live on. The Young Lords, the civil rights movement, they remind us that justice is never given. It's fought for. And the fight doesn't end until every community, every person, has the dignity they deserve.